This is the GT-M Hyperion V8 by Race Sim Studio. In this video, we'll cover some of the areas of the car you might want to know more about. For more of the button control mappings, you can refer to the README file inside the downloaded package. Most of the things we'll discuss here require the CSP tool, but we do provide a data package for the standard version of Assetto Corsa. First, let's go over some of the adjustment options we have. With this car, you can turn on individually and change the colour of the upper indicator lights, change the colour of or completely remove the LED strips on the windows, add or remove the digital panel on the windscreen, and do the same for the number panel on the side. All this can be controlled inside the car's config file, so check our default liveries for examples. On that note, the lighting is controlled in the typical RSS fashion. We have a main headlight control, an adjustable high beam control, and a separate control for the more colourful lighting arrays. The headlight glass and lighting can also be changed to yellow via a combination of texture and config code seen in one of our default liveries. While it looks cool, this is used in racing to indicate an amateur driver, including the green side number panel. The back of the car has a true-to-life brake light and a manually activated flashing rain light. There's also a cool electric paint effect on the main design of our car, which glows at night. Perfect for nighttime driving, the interior has the commonly seen violet light that turns on with the headlights in our case, but we also have some glow from the steering wheel buttons and the displays. Moving on to the displays, we have three inside the car. One to give us useful track status information such as flags, lap time data, position data, and how far ahead or behind you are to other positions. More data appears according to these track scenarios and different session types. Next, we have the primary display. Using the RSS settings app or using buttons mapped to the extended controls app, we can cycle through 3 pages for the car. The first is Race 1, which provides as much information as possible on your fuel, how much was used last lap, your plus or minus trajectory, how much fuel you've used per lap, and overall. On the right side, we have more timing output such as the last lap, performance delta to your best time, a predicted lap time which takes into account your previous laps, and how many laps remain in a race scenario. Towards the middle, we have the speed at the top, your gear and display name in the oval, and your brake bias underneath that. It's important to note that the middle oval can change colour depending on pitting scenarios. When it's red, you're approaching the pit lane, above the pit lane speed limiter. When it's green, you're under the limit. When it's white, it means your pit lane limiter is active, and when it's light blue, it means you have the wet tyres on. Quickly going over the bottom half of the display, you have temperature readouts for the brakes and tyres and the tyre pressures. These can change colour depending on whether they're in a more optimal window in white or beyond that in red. Beneath that, from left to right, we have throttle, which is for one of the 10 throttle map positions we have for the car, pass, which we're not using, TC long, which is actually our TC2 in this instance, which defines how aggressive the torque cut is when it engages the primary traction control setting that's displayed in TC lat. Then the ABS in yellow, followed by the engine map in a hard to read navy, and then the lap counter in white. Changes to these settings among other actions like engaging the clutch paddle for starts and more will show various pop-ups on the primary display. Now that we have a basic summary of the primary display, the other 2 pages are variations of the first page, with Race 2 showing a bit of creative data with oil and fuel pressures in addition to oil and water temperatures, and Quali showing a more streamlined version of the display for a more focused look during qualification laps. Finally, on this display unit, we have 10 RGB LEDs at the top, which go from green to flashing blue as the RPM increases and it's time to shift. Then something you'll notice with the top LEDs are that they can turn purple to indicate tyre locking for the front. The rears are shown with the bottom side LEDs in yellow. When the traction control is engaged, the upper side LEDs turn green. Moving on to the third and final display, this is a pretty exciting development done with John R777 and the CSP devs, which works out the positions of the most immediate cars behind and their positions relative to you. They're shown with a red arrow, which will feel familiar to you if you use other car tracking apps in Assetto Corsa. This bit of clever tracking is quite a special feature to showcase on our car, and it's quite amazing to think of how complex all these cars have become and what they can do to mimic the real world that you don't typically get in other sims. What's more, you can change the camera by clicking with the mouse on the cam logo on the top right, cycling from the default collision avoidance camera, a simpler rear camera, and a nice front-facing camera. Something else quite interesting we've been doing for quite a while in our other cars, but not to this extent, is the illumination of the LEDs on the center console according to various settings you have on the car, from the starter to the wipers, the brightness of the displays, the lighting activations, electronic assists, and more. Have a play around with some of your options and settings and see what you can see visually changing here. Beyond that, there's a whole host of features in the setup of the car covering the most important things and more seen in cars of this category. Our cars are generally set up quite conservatively, but you have the power to change the setup to suit your preferences. You'll get 2 gear sets depending on the homologated racing series we've mapped out. A dry and a wet tyre compound, fuel target, which affects the fuel plus or minus we've seen on the displays, where if more fuel is used than the target, the indicator will go red, otherwise green. We also have several engine and throttle maps we've mentioned earlier, electronic assists controls, brake duct coverage, and all the pages for the all-important suspension adjustment. With the more obvious tangible features discussed, one of the biggest factors to the qualities of our work is with the sound. Today, according to the layers, the audio projects are 20 to 30 times more complex than they were a decade ago, with the same tools taking into account starter motors, Doppler effects, positional audio, and mechanical noises on top of the already complicated engine layers. Our projects spare no expense when it comes to audio, directly from the car into your speakers. But what's interesting is this time, we've added a little feature in the RSS settings app to control the transmission volume and extra details around the engine and the bodywork. This is a work in progress and we'll continue to develop more aspects of the audio suite. The real unsung heroes when it comes to setting our work apart are the less noticed visual elements. Everything you see is thought out, like our new custom driver we can project any face onto, the motion of the side nettings, the handmade detailed textures in and around the car, the way details are added throughout the car, and the all-important shader work, ensuring the cars are compliant to AC's specifications. Most of the time is spent on the 3D models, which we know it's easy to get the essence of a car's shape, but when you really start looking deeper at things like proportions, smoothing, and the way light reflects from surfaces, it's a different world and takes significantly longer to produce, and it's something we've been known for from our beginning, and this car is no exception. The 9th instalment of our GT-M category, be sure to check out the Hyperion V8 for yourself. Thanks for watching, hopefully this video helped you with some of the features and details with the car. We'll see you soon for the next one, be sure to visit us at racesimstudio.com. Enjoy!